Retirement may seem like a distant dream when you're in your 30s, but today on Talking Sense, we're going to look at why you should be thinking about retirement now. I've got my good friend Brian here. He's one of our newer advisors, and he's going to be joining me on this topic. And I have to say, when you say like, oh, it feels like it's forever away in your 30s, I'm like, it feels like my 30s were yesterday, but it's been a minute. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute for me too, but I still think of myself as 30.
My body tells me I'm definitely in my 40s, but my brain is certainly still young at heart, I hope. But today we're going to be talking about some misconceptions and obstacles that tend to hold people back from thinking ahead in their 30s, or if you're younger, even then, or if you're like me and you're in your 40s, get started now. But we're going to talk about some of those, and then we're also going to talk about some steps to take, and we're calling it if you're in your 30s, but really in general, to set yourself up to win later. So, we'll get into the details of it later, but we did before this episode, all of us were like, man, I could kick myself. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have done things so differently when it comes to my finances.
Yes, most people don't realize what they can and can't do as far as saving for retirement, especially when they're younger. And then they realize, they wake up one day in their 40s or 50s and like, oh, I should have been doing this a long time ago.
Yes. And one of the things that was a wake-up call for me, and this is kind of a silly one, but it genuinely made me go, what in the world? I had just started out as an advisor, and I had a client pulling their Social Security statement, and I realized, I've never really paid attention to mine. I should pull mine so I can understand what people have. And I did the math for how much I had made up to that point in my life, and I just went, over the fact that I had made that much money and I had so little to show for it, because it just kind of slips through your hands like water if you're not careful.
You never see that. I mean, if you pay attention to your pay stub, you kind of see it, but you don't really think about it because you never touch that.
Because you're in the moment.
That's right.
But let's start with some of the common misconceptions. One of the big ones is I'm too young to worry about retirement planning now. Like a lot of people, I just want to live my life. I'm in my 20s. I'm in my 30s. I'm too young.
Yeah, they think they have more higher priorities, but really saving for retirement should be one of your top priorities. As soon as you get your first job. I was blessed to have the opportunity with the employer plan, and we'll talk about that later, but to start saving from day one. I had a mentor who helped me do that. And so, yes, it's very important that you start from day one.
And let's talk about that. If you started at age 30 even, we're not even starting in the 20s like we feel like you could. And let me be clear, we're not talking about putting thousands of dollars a month away. But let's pretend at age 30, you started putting $200 a month away and you invested until you were 60. And assuming an 8% return, which we can't guarantee you'd get that, but we're just using that for math. You could have $298,000 and some change just from that one small step. Let's talk about someone who waits till 40 and they're putting in 2 times as much. Same rate of return, stopping at 60. They have $235,000. So starting now is important, but there's a $60,000 difference in that 10 years.
Exactly. And that's assuming that you don't ever increase your contribution. You keep that same contribution, but hopefully, as you go on, your earning potential goes up and you can increce that. And that number will get bigger.
Yeah. One of the tips I give my clients is every year that you get a raise, increase it before the raise hits. By like 1 or 2%.
You should always pay yourself first. Is that a Dave Ramsey?
I think it is.
Saying, but you should always pay yourself first. When you get a raise, pay yourself first.
So that's the first one. I'm too young, and I get it. So please don't hear me saying, trying to minimize what all you have pulling at you, because I remember, financially we weren't just affluent in our 30s, but I do think there was a lot more waste than I would like to honor and acknowledge. And I think too, when I was in college, I started tithing. And of course the tithe check for a college student is what, $50 a month,
Maybe.
And there was times when it was challenging, but I got into the habit of doing it young, which made it easier to carry through adulthood. And those checks are obviously a little different now, but it's easier to write because I've built the discipline.
Yes.
And that's the key. All right. So here's the next one. I'll have plenty of time to catch up later.
Oh boy, do we hear this all the time.
But time can either be your friend or your enemy.
Yes.
When you have lots of time, then you have the benefits of compound interest, dollar cost averaging, just the market volatility up and down. All of those things can really help you out in the long run.
Yes.
But the longer you wait, the less opportunity you have for those things to work in your benefit.
Yeah. People think, I'll make so much more when I'm in my 40s and my 50s. I'll just catch up from there. But actually, it's very difficult to catch up because of the compound interest. You have to contribute so much at a much higher rate.
Well, and look back to the example we had. We had $200 a month or $400 a month, and they ended up in a very close proximity of each other. We had to do double the contributions to even get close with just a 10-year gap. So time costs you. And life happens as you age. There's no guarantee that you're going to have more. I will tell you, my kids are just as expensive as teenagers as they were as toddlers.
Yes.
Like I may not be paying for daycare, but there's a lot of expenses coming with, and now granted, I have kids that play competitive sports. Yes. Not all kids do that, but your kid's going to have something as they age that likely is going to pull at you. And if not kids, it's going to be something else.
Oh, yeah.
The next obstacle, student loans. Let's just deal with it.
Yeah, man. Student loans, many times we have clients or we see people who are in their 30s and are still trying to pay those things off. And that just really hinders someone who is trying to contribute to retirement. They're raising their family, life happens, and they've got this cloud hanging over them that that they're trying to deal with.
Yes. I think one thing is most student loans do have really manageable interest rates. And there are some new options out there with the Secure Act 2.0. There have been some new legislations in the last couple of years that relate to student loans. So, certainly look into what options you have. There are employers that will pay that debt off for you. If you work in certain circumstances, you can get it forgiven. So there are a lot of options out there. But even if you're paying your student loans, if your employer offers a match and you're not getting it, you're walking away from free money. You can't slice it any other way for me. If I walked up to you and I said, hey, if you'll give me $20 here in a few days, I'll give you back $40, and you trusted me, obviously, you'd find $20.
You better believe it, I would.
But with an employer plan, if you put in a certain amount and they will match it, you have just doubled your investment. Why would you not participate?
Exactly.
And you could even use a pre-tax option to lower your taxes if it's something that you need help offsetting. But, that one for me is one that I'm like, even if you have debt, that's where Dave and I disagree. Go ahead and get your match because that's free money.
Exactly. You may not be able to contribute the maximum amount to your employer plan, but at least get the match.
And one of the new legislation pieces is that there is a piece in there that if your employer allows it, they can match what you're paying to your student loans as the employer match. So there's a lot of options out there. And to me, there's really no reason not to at least look into it and make sure you're doing something there. Another obstacle that some people use is home purchases. The cost of a down payment and closing fees can be daunting. But just like anything else, you've got quite a bit of time to deal with that.
Yes.
Ideally, yes, you would have a bigger down payment, but you also need to make sure your home is affordable. So with the market where it's at right now, maybe you should pause and look at your overall picture instead of making that the priority over your future self.
Exactly. Here in the last few years, home prices have just skyrocketed. And there's some parts of Arkansas, the demand is just keeping the market up. So you just really need to make wise decisions on whether to continue renting or making that a home purchase, and that can impact the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before, but the last one was childcare costs. Daycare is not cheap, y'all. I am not saying it is, but I think for some, they'll use that as a barrier. Let me be clear, though. It may be when you're paying for daycare, but at some point, you're out of daycare. So what are you doing with the money then? Are you being intentional to apply it towards your future? Or are you just letting it get absorbed into the budget and pretending like you got a pay raise and letting that lifestyle inflation come up? So maybe childcare genuinely is holding you back right now, but it shouldn't be holding you back forever. So as soon as those kids don't need that daycare, allocate those dollars to your future retirement and get that ball rolling. Those are some of the things that people have used or explained to us as like roadblocks, but I want to get into some kind of best practices. What are some things that people should be doing or could be doing to help themselves be better in the long run? And of course, because of what we believe in, we're going to say you need to meet with an advisor, someone who can help you understand where you are, where you want to go, how to get there, give you some actionable steps to do. But I want to circle back. You made a comment earlier about someone who invested in you early in your career and what an impact that made, because I feel like having mentors is so important.
Definitely. So it was probably day 2 or 3. I can remember where we are in the street, driving down the road, the color of the truck, But he said at the employer I was at the time, they had a really
robust,
yes, a robust employee match. And he looked at me and said, and probably pointed his finger and said, I don't care what you do. I want you to contribute the maximum amount from day one, because they'll match that dollar for dollar. And you will never regret it. I was young and dumb and definitely not making very much, but I did it. I never missed it. I did it for many, many years, as long as I was there, and I have not regretted it.
Well, I think doing it early in your career, again, built that habit. You never missed it. You didn't realize how that would affect you. So you just worked around it.
Yes.
And I think that's important for those who are in my boat and your boat to be honest with the younger generations. In the case of your employer, they had a double-digit match. Okay. So you had to put in double digits, but they would match it. And when you think about that, a huge chunk of money was being put back, even with a smaller salary.
Yes.
But even if your match is 3%, get 3%.
Yes.
Put the full amount in. Don't walk away from free money. Please, please, please. If you don't have access to an employer plan, don't do like I did. Okay, so this is my turn to be like y'all don't judge me. When I was younger, I had done the Dave Ramsey course, but I missed the part about IRAs. I just kind of passed it off as those are all employer plans. I'm not really going to focus into the conversation. And so when I found myself a single mom in my mid-30s, I still didn't have any retirement savings because I didn't know I had access to IRAs.
Yes.
And I wish I had known, because I'm the type of person that I would have put something in from the minute I started earning income. You can do it at 16, 15. When you have earned income, you can start contributing to an IRA. It has to be custodial for a while until you're 18, but your kids or you can start as soon as you have earned income.
Exactly.
And if I had known about it, I would have used it. And that's a big part of why I wanted to do this show, why I wanted to be an advisor. There are things that people just don't have access to, or if they see it, they don't understand it enough to know that it applies to them.
I think they hear and see the alphabet soup that we talk about and use all day, every day. There's all
the jargon,
the 401k, the IRA, the Roth IRA, whatever, and they just kind of get overwhelmed and like, well, I don't understand it. I don't know what I can do or can't do. I don't even know who to talk to. And they just discount it and move on.
Yes. And when they get overwhelmed, they get analysis paralysis, then they just say, okay, it didn't apply to me. I think, start by educating yourself, but make steps. If you can't do an employer plan, do an IRA and just do what you can afford. If it's $50 a month, that's $50 a month more progress than you would have gotten otherwise. But work toward increasing that. Your goal should be maximizing things over time. And one of the ways you can get there if you have access to an employer plan is every time you get a raise, increase your contribution before the raise hits the paycheck.
Exactly.
So if you know the raise is coming, increase the contribution first. And if you were to take, your typical 30-year-old and they made, let's say they work somewhere that gets a cost of living adjustment every single year. If they increased it by 1% per year, by the time they retire, they're in the 30% range of how much they're contributing. That's substantial.
It is. Also, people who are self-employed, those folks really need to do some educating themselves.
Yes, because there are options, and many of them think there aren't.
Yes.
And so, you've got to really pay attention to what you have access to. Use the tools that you have. And if you're like us and you're getting closer to retirement, you're going, oh, what am I going to do? There are options to catch up. When you hit age 50, you can get more. You have access to put more into your plans. So don't feel like you just need to give up and shut down. Don't bury your head in the sand. Get a clear, concise evaluation of where you are, where you want to go, and then apply the changes that need to be made. And then you also can create a roadmap. There are milestones along the way. So taking some time to be intentional, and then protect your assets through insurance. We've had episodes about this before, but really it's important to make sure you've got your insurance in place. All right, it's time for our 2 cents, and this is kind of our final thoughts for the episode. I'll let you go first.
Okay.
Brian.
You deserve to choose how you spend your future. Maybe you don't know quite what you want it to be or what it's going to look like yet, but it's important that you begin taking some steps and begin reaching some milestones so that you're working towards what your future can be.
And if you're not sure what that looks like, you can be sure. You can take time to meet with an advisor, have a conversation, set some goals, and have some accountability there. And if sparking true financial independence is a priority for you, we've got some free tools. One of those is the 6 keys to unlocking financial independence. You can get it free on our website, getreadyforthefuture.com/keys, or you can text the word keys to 501-381-5228. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on Talking Sense. We hope this content's been useful to you. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening to Talking Sense. And if you like what you hear, make sure and subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes. The Gym Wealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or by calling our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and Gym Wealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.